It's good to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest out brew the Magic World. Today we are starting our Murders at Karlov Manor content. I'm so excited. This set looks like a ton of fun. There's some fun stuff spread throughout, and I'm excited to cover it. And as always, the deck list will be down in the description below for you. Like I said in a community post over the weekend, this week is pre-con week. We're covering all four of the pre-cons this week, and I'm actually doing something a little bit different. You will find that video uploaded alongside that video, or this video, at the time you see this. But today we are talking about the Revenant Recon pre-con, and we're talking about Mirko, Obsessive Theorist, a 3-mana 1/3 vampire detective with flying and vigilance. Says whenever we surveil, we put a counter on Mirko, +1 counter. This is the beginning of your end step. You may return target creature card with power less than Merco's from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So what I like about Merco that I think makes this deck really fun is we have a reason to surveil. I think most decks, right, you're surveilling to either load your graveyard to reanimate or to play with other effects. What I like about Merco is we're surveilling to get him to be a threat, them to be a threat. I apologize, I just realized I didn't look, but it looks like a man there to me. You're surveilling to grow Merco to be a threat in the air, right? I mean, potentially against the right opponent, Merco could just be a commander damage threat to someone in the air, but as well, we're going to use their power to get things back from the graveyard. Now, for that reason, we don't always need to have reanimation effects. In fact, I cut one or two of them out of the deck, but I added in other ways for us to take advantage of the cards that are in our graveyard, as well as taking advantage of, Merco brings these creatures back with a finality counter on it. If it would die, we exile instead. We actually also have some ways to take those finality counters off of those creatures that even if they go back to the graveyard, we can bring them back again. So first we'll talk about surveilling and kind of some of the cards we added to the precon and some of the good cards we have that surveil. Then we'll talk about the reanimation / copy / removing finality counter stuff. And then we'll go into a little playtest for you guys. The deck has a ton of ways to surveil. In fact, the precon itself has a lot of ways to do it. In fact, two of my favorite cards that care about surveilling that I think are going to be fun creatures to use are Dimir Spybug and Thoughtbound Phantasm. These are both really cheap creatures that get bigger like Merco every time we surveil. And I like that because then they're going to become threats that we can copy back out of the graveyard as well. But this deck includes two of my favorite creatures that have anything to do with surveilling, and I'm so glad that they got reprints of the deck. The first is Doom Whisperer, a 5-mana 6/6 Nightmare Demon that just pay 2 life and surveil 2. What I love about this is that we pay life to do it and it's at instant speed, meaning if we have spare life to throw around, we can do this in our opponent's turns to grow Merco if we want to. And I just think Doom Whisperer's a great body, and if it gets put in the graveyard, as we'll talk about when we get into our creatures later, it's a great thing to copy. Same thing with Dream Eater. When it comes in, we surveil 4. If we do, we return target non-land permanent and opponent controls the owner's hand. There's a 4/3 with flying for 6. If we can get it back from the graveyard, we get to surveil 4 and then bounce things. Or it's a half-decent card on our own. But again, I love these two creatures. These are both from the last time we went to Ravnica. And I just like both of these creatures. They were a lot of really fun value, and they feel like fun top-end creatures for us in a deck like this. We're playing a card from the Ravnica Clue Edition in Dimir Strandcatcher. It's a 4-mana 3/3 that says whenever we attack, we surveil X, where X is the number of opponents being attacked, which is going to at least always be 1 if we're attacking, right? Could potentially be 3. This is the beginning of each end step. If there were 3 or more cards put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield this turn, we draw a card. So if we're surveilling throughout our turn and we can get to at least 3, Dimir Strandcatcher is going to draw us a card every turn, and this feels like another great target to copy onto. Getting into spells, writing things like Thought Erasure just to hit somebody's hand and take a card to surveil 1, start the target surveils 2, and then draws, and it's something we could jumpstart back. We don't really care about the Planeswalk because we're not really playing Plane Shift, but I think the 2 mana to surveil 2 and then draw is exactly what we're paying for something like Curate, so obviously we don't mind having that effect, and it feels really good. Getting into the instance, we're adding things like Drag the Canal, which if a creature died this turn, we gain 2, Surveil 2, and then Investigate. We brought in Unauthorized Exit from the main set. Whenever we return non-land permanent to its owner's hand and Surveil 1. Same thing with Unexplained Disappearance, bringing a creature back to its owner's hand and Surveilling 1. The thing I like about these 2 cards is, yes, most of the time they're going to target our opponent, but what's cool is if we needed to bounce our own thing to save our own thing, we actually could, and we'll still Surveil 1 in the process. Now, the downside with Mirko, right, is that he doesn't get counters equal to the amount of cards we surveil. We just care about surveilling, and so Surveil 1 is just as useful because we get the counter no matter what. We have a Fara's Dispersal from the precon, returning a creature back and surveilling 2. We have 2 removal spells that are kind of fun in Pylon and Price of Fame. Both surveil 2 and can destroy target creature. Pylon can be convoked to make it cheaper. Price of Fame can be a little bit cheaper if we target a legendary creature. But I like the fact that we're stapling Surveil onto cards we already care about and getting more value from them. Getting down into our artifacts, we added Laser Screwdriver, which has the 2 mana to Surveil 1, or it's just a mana rock for 3. We have Candlestick from both the main set and the Revenant Recon edition, which gives a creature, when this creature attacks, Surveil 2. That basically means that this is going to be really great for Merco, because it's just, or any other creature, because they're just going to surveil when they attack, and then it's a clue, so we can always pay 2 to get rid of it at the end of the day. And then we added Sword of Once in Future, which whenever the creature deals damage to a player, we surveil 2, and it gives some fun effects. We'll talk about Sword of Hearthstone in a second when we talk about the ways that we can reanimate and have some fun with our creatures. I love that Disinformation Campaign and Enhanced Surveillance are in the precon, because these are 2 of probably the more recognizable surveil cards to me. When it comes to a Disinformation Campaign, says when it enters the battlefield, you draw and each opponent discards a card, and then whenever you surveil, you can bring it back to your hand, meaning we can be hopefully drawing cards and having our opponents discard. And then Enhanced Surveillance says whenever we surveil, we may look at an additional 2 cards, which will help us dig through our library even better, and then we can exile, just shuffle our graveyard into our library, and that's important because if we dig too deep, we can get out of it. But the card I think I'm the happiest that got errata, and this is the version that's in the Tomb Raider Secret Lair, but you can actually play any printing of this card. Now, all of the printings do not say this text, but it has been errata to this text. It's Search First Canta, which says at the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. The old card's actually explaining out Surveil, but now the official Oracle text is Surveil 1, and then if you have 7 or more lands, you can flip it over. This is great because now you can play this card and take really good advantage of it, an effect that was already surveilling anyway, and that is a big benefit to us. Just to show you guys, all of those old versions of the cards won't say it, but now that the Oracle text says Surveil 1, you can actually play any printing of that card, and you're going to take a big advantage of it. Okay, well, we talked about kind of surveilling. Now let's talk about the ways we're going to get creatures into our graveyard, get creatures out of our graveyard, or take advantage of it. Let's talk about the ways we're going to take those finality counters off of our creatures first. The first is Feign the Broker. We can tap to remove a counter from our creature we control to make a treasure, and that's pretty cool. Take the finality off. Get a treasure for it, seems really good. Soul Diviner, remove a counter from an artifact, creature, land, or planeswalker we control to draw a card. This works both ways. These guys work both ways, right? Because obviously we want to take the finality counters off, but we could also take plus one counters off of Mirko to do these effects. We don't just have to take a finality counter off. And that's important because that can help us keep our draw up if we need it, if that becomes important for us. And the third card that does that is Power Conduit. This one doesn't come in the deck, unfortunately, but I think it's a great card for what it does. At least I don't believe it doesn't. Power Conduit says remove a counter from target permanent you control. We choose one, either put a charge counter on an artifact or put a counter on our target creature. This is great because basically we just tap it, take a counter off that creature that we brought back with the finality counter on it, and put a counter on Merco or some other creature. And again, and now that creature doesn't exile when it dies, and we can continue to use Merco's effect to get it back. We're playing that sort of Hearthstone, because not only does it give us a basic land when a creature deals damage, but we get to blink a creature we own, and that's great because we blink the creature that has the finality counter on it. It exiles, comes back in without the counter, and then now it's there without the finality counter, and we don't have to worry about it anymore, and that's important. We're still playing the Reanimate and the Animate Dead. I just cut the Necromancy because I wanted to focus on a couple other creatures that I think could be really fun. We have Lazav in the deck. which Lazaba can become a creature target of a copy of a creature in our deck or our graveyard. And we just talked about Lazaba a week or so ago when we built the deck. But I also added Likeness Looter, which does the same thing. It becomes a target copy of a creature card in our graveyard and then a value X, except it has flying and has this ability. And that's good because we can copy some important creatures from our graveyard if they go there. So what are the important creatures in our graveyard that we can copy? Well, we have fun things like the Ancient One, which becomes an 8/8 with a pretty cool effect. We have things like Toxrill. No, Toxrill I don't think fits what most people would think of when they think of this deck. What I like about Toxrill is it's a card that can just change the game in our favor and become very difficult to deal with. Same thing with something like Twilight Prophet. As soon as we hit 10 permanents and have the City's Blessing, start of our turn, we reveal the top card, and everybody loses X, and we gain X where X is that card's mana value. This is a card that can start hurting our opponents turn after turn and taking advantage of those, those cards that we're getting to our hand. Of course, Doom Whisperer and Dream Eater aren't bad here, right, either to copy because they have important effects. Another good one, if we can get it into our graveyard instead of casting it, is Eye of Duskmantle, one of the new cards. It says we can play lands and cast spells from among cards in your graveyard you've surveilled this turn. If you cast a spell this way, you could pay life rather than paying its mana cost. I like this as something we can copy back out of our graveyard if we can't just straight up reanimate it out of our graveyard with Merco or something else, because then we can do this, have multiples of these effects and kind of make sure we always have it available. There's a lot more of a choices we could have picked for creatures, and I think there's a lot of fun. We're playing things like Phyrexian Metamorph and Vizier Many Faces that come in the deck for us to copy these kinds of creatures and take advantage of them. But I like that this is where you could really make the deck your own. I chose things like Toxrill and Twilight Prophet, which came in the deck, and those kind of cards where you could just as easily choose other things to put in those slots for you. I like Toxrill. It's a fun a control piece, and it's a great finisher in certain games where you just need to punch through for a little bit more. But that's just a little bit of my overview of what the deck is. Let's get into a playtest. We keep a 3-lander here with a Talisman, which is a pretty great start. We got Doom Whisperer in our hand, Dog Detective when it comes in, Surveil 2, and then whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, we can return it from our graveyard to our hand. But hey, it's a 2-mana Surveil 2, which isn't too bad. Of course, Mirko is 3 mana, so we do need to build up a little bit. So I'd put that Choked Estuary in, of course, revealing a swamp or the island. Doesn't matter either way. And we don't have anything to do with it, but we could always fake it. We draw Takenuma, a great land, which lets us mill cards and return a creature from our graveyard back. But of course, it just puts cards into our graveyard, which is never a bad thing. We'll play one of those swamps and get that Talisman down. That way, next turn, we can play Mirko if that's our best play. We draw Toxic Deluge, of course, a great card in its own right. A board wipe and a great one at it. I think here we play Mirko. Obviously, we have nothing to Surveil 1 this turn, but I think that's okay. We get Mirko down on board and we get him ready to go. Turn 4, Toxrill isn't a bad one. Something I'd rather Surveil, but that's okay. I think here we probably just Dog Detective to Surveil 2 and keep this counter spell open. Not a bad thing to have access to. I realized last turn we could have Dog Detective because we had 5 mana, or we only had 4 mana. Sorry, yeah, that's right. We get a Consider and a Pylon. These are both great cards because they both Surveil, and both of them are going to trigger Mirko again. So I'd actually just put them right back on top the same way we saw them. Mirko gets a counter here and becomes a 2/4, and we could take an attack this turn. Like I said, I probably leave up the counter spell just in case someone tries to remove Mirko or someone tries to play something we don't want. This turn, we can do the Consider if we want to. We know the top card of our deck. We're still going to do it anyway. We're still going to Surveil, get the Pylon, and then we draw it. That leaves 4 mana left. We could do the Takenuma if we want to. I really wish we could pitch a card with Takenuma to get this Toxrill in our graveyard. But if we play Takenuma, we go up to 6 mana, and then we're only 1 mana away from that. I think I just play the Takenuma and get Doom Whisperer down. This just allows us to Surveil on someone else's turn if we want. Let's say, for the purpose of this, play through, let's say we're going to Surveil on our opponent's turn by playing 2 life, give Mirko another counter. We see an Animate Dead and a Swamp, and I think I'm content to put both of those back on top. Mirko gets another counter. This turn we draw that Swamp, and I probably just Windmill Slam Toxrill at this point. Now, we can have the board completely on our side as far as hopefully keeping our opponents pushed down. Now we just have to worry about protecting Toxroll. But the cool part is we now have Pylon and 4 creatures. So if we didn't want to attack, we could always, pile on somebody's creature at instant speed. Unfortunately, we lose ourselves out of the counterspell. But the cool part is if they wipe the board or kill anything, we can just get it back from our graveyard with Mirko, or get it back by other means. So this is a pretty cool board state. Again, Toxroll makes it better, but I think Doom Whisperer makes this pretty great because we can just pay 2 any time to Surveil, start loading the top of our deck, make sure we know what's coming, and if we don't like something, we just bin it. So if we just paid 2 life right now, Animate Dead and Breach the Multiverse. Of course, Breach probably something we want to keep on top. Same thing with Animate Dead. But, Breach is another example next turn where if our board stayed pretty intact, Breach might just end a game with getting people's creatures back onto the battlefield under our control and just having a lot of value to do with it. But let me know, what do you think of this updated Merco deck in the comments section below? I'd love to hear what you think, and I will catch you guys next time.